The for sale sign went up in front of my Ohio home on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had watched strangers walk through the rooms where I'd raised my daughter, where Frank had built bookcases, where we'd celebrated Christmases and graduations. My realtor was thrilled with the quick offer. All I felt was a hollow ache under my ribs, but Jenny's voice was a constant soothing balm over the phone. "It's going to be amazing, Mom. The kids are so excited. We'll be a real family. You'll never be lonely. We'll take care of you." I packed my life into cardboard boxes, telling myself the loneliness was a small price for belonging. The Pennsylvania house was a grand old dame of a craftsman with a wide porch and eaves that needed repair. It swallowed the entire proceeds from my old house, and then some. The idea was simple. Beautiful, a multi-generational home. Jenny, David, and their 2 kids would move into the spacious upstairs. I'd take the lovely ensuite bedroom on the main floor. We'd share the kitchen, the living spaces. They'd contribute to the monthly bills. It was a partnership. I painted the dining room a deep, welcoming burgundy. I spent every day of that first summer on my knees in the dirt planting peonies and lavender, and a whole section of heirloom roses. I set up a sewing nook in a sunny corner and even had Frank's old workbench moved into the detached garage, imagining future projects with my grandson. The first time David called my furniture dated, I smiled and said I liked things with history. He shrugged a dismissive little motion. "This place has great bones, Anne, but it needs a vision. A modern vision." Jenny, perched on the arm of his chair, nodded. "David has such an eye for these things." My Victorian sideboard, a piece Frank and I found at an auction early in our marriage, suddenly looked shabby, not shabby chic. Then came the pot roast incident. It was a recipe from my own mother, a Sunday dinner staple for decades. The smell of it cooking always felt like love. David took one bite, chewed thoughtfully, and set his fork down. "You know that new Italian place in the village does a killer osso buco. Very upscale. Might be more fitting when we have Jenny's clients over." Jenny didn't meet my eyes. "He's right, Mom. We should think about professional catering for entertaining." The message was clear. My love served on a platter was not up to their standard. Slowly, I became the background machinery of their lives. I was the one who did the grocery shopping because I had the time. I was the default babysitter because my schedule was flexible. I cooked meals that were often eaten hastily before they rushed out to more important things or were replaced entirely by gourmet pizza delivery. One night, I walked into the living room where Jenny and David were looking at brochures for a luxury resort in the Caribbean. "That looks wonderful," I said. David closed the brochure. "Just dreaming, Anne." The conversation ended. I went to the kitchen to load the dishwasher, the silent, unpaid house manager. Alone in my room, I'd stare at the ceiling. I'd hear Jenny's laugh from upstairs, a sound that once was my favorite melody, now feeling separate, belonging to a world I was no longer part of. I'd tell myself the same worn-out mantra. They're building their lives. They're stressed. I'm the parent. I need to be patient. I need to make this work. But in the quiet, a colder, harder truth was forming. I wasn't just feeling lonely. I was feeling used. And the garden outside my window, my beautiful, thriving garden, felt like the only thing in this big house that was truly, unquestionably mine. It started with the living room. I came back from a doctor's appointment to find David and a helper moving my velvet settee and wingback chairs toward the basement stairs. "Surprise," David said, not sounding surprised at all. "We found this incredible minimalist sectional and a glass coffee table. Opens the whole space up." By evening, my cozy, layered room was replaced with sharp angles, cold metal, and gray upholstery. My things looked forlorn in the damp basement. A week later, David informed me he was converting the garage into a home gym. "That old workbench is just collecting dust, Anne. Need to maximize our space." My connection to Frank, my hobby, my quiet creative outlet boxed up and deemed obsolete. The overheard conversation was the real blow. I was coming down for a glass of water late one night. Their voices floated from the kitchen, low and serious. David's tone was all practicality. "She's healthy as a horse, Jen. She could live another 30 years. Our plans for the kitchen extension and the pool are on permanent hold at this rate." A long sigh from Jenny, then words that iced my blood. "I know, and she's slowing down. It's becoming an inconvenience." I stood frozen in the dark hallway, my hand on the wall for support. An inconvenience. I was the roadblock to their pool. Trying to reconnect, I asked my 8-year-old grandson if he wanted to help me plant sunflowers. His face lit up, but Jenny swooped in. "Not now, sweetie. You have coding practice on your tablet. That's more important than digging in the dirt, right?" She smiled at me, a tight, polite smile. "He needs to keep up, Mom. The world's digital now." Every part of me, I offered my knowledge. My time, my love was gently, firmly pushed aside as irrelevant. The breaking point for them, it seemed, was when I gently broached finances. The property tax bill had arrived, a staggering amount. The homeowner's insurance was up for renewal. "I was thinking," I said carefully over dinner, "now that we're all settled, maybe we could formalize a monthly contribution from you both for the taxes and insurance. It would really help." David's chair scraped back. His face was a mask of offended disbelief. "Are you serious, Anne? After all we do. We live here, yes, but we're family. This is so transactional." Jenny looked at her plate, silent. My reasonable request was framed as a heartless betrayal. Something in me shut down that night. The hurt was too deep for tears. It was a quiet, steely resolve. I went to my desk and pulled out the filing cabinet where I kept all the important documents. The deed, the mortgage papers, the receipts for every improvement. I spread them out like a general surveying a map. Then I called Robert, an old friend from my teaching days, who was now a retired attorney. I told him I needed to update my will. His voice was warm. "Of course, Anne, but is everything all right?" The concern in his voice nearly undid me. "I just need to be sure things are clear, Robert, for everyone." While organizing the papers, a folded blueprint slid out from behind a stack of warranties. It was a crude architectural sketch. Our house, but with a massive wing added on one side and a rectangular pool drawn in the backyard. In David's aggressive scrawl across the top were the words, "Spring timeline. Need to resolve the obstacle first." The word obstacle was underlined twice. My breath left my body. The room tilted. I was not a grandmother, a mother, a person. I was an obstacle, a problem to be resolved, and I knew with a chilling certainty that their resolution would not be in my favor. My meeting with Robert was in a quiet coffee shop 20 miles away. I showed him everything, the deed in my name alone, the sketch, the receipts. His kind eyes grew serious. "And legally, you hold all the cards. This is your house. They are your guests, technically speaking, even if they're family." He advised a direct, firm conversation, laying out boundaries. I nodded, sipping my tea, but my mind was already leaping ahead. A conversation would lead to more arguments, more emotional manipulation. I needed a plan, not a debate. "Robert," I said, my voice quieter than I intended, "what if they force the issue? What if they ask me to leave?" He leaned forward. "They can ask. You can say no. Or," he paused, "you can say yes, but on your terms. You have the power here, Anne. You just have to be willing to use it." I asked him to keep our talk confidential. He agreed, squeezing my hand. "You call me when you're ready." Returning home, I began to see the house with new eyes, not as a home, but as an asset, a collection of items, a legal entity. I started a secret digital list on my tablet tucked away in a password-protected note. Item: Persian rug in living room. Purchased by me 2019. Item: Sub-Zero refrigerator. Purchased by me, install date March of last year. Item hand-blown glass light fixture over dining table. Custom order, my signature on receipt. I walked the garden like a surveyor. Item 12. Heirloom Queen of Sweden, rose bushes. Purchased from White Flower Farm, planted by me. Item Japanese maple tree, center of backyard. A gift from Frank for our 40th anniversary, transplanted by me. This meticulous cataloging was my anchor. It was proof. It was sanity. I tried Robert's advice. I asked Jenny to sit with me in the sunroom. Honey, we need to talk about the future, about how we're all living here. I think we need a clear agreement. Before I could finish, her face flushed with anger. An agreement? What does that mean? Are you trying to evict us, Mom? Is that it? Her voice rose to a shrill pitch I'd never heard before. This is my house. You bought it for me, for us. The raw entitlement in her words winded me. She didn't see a shared home. She saw an inheritance that was inconveniently still in my possession. The conversation was over before it began. The atmosphere after that was Siberian. They ate dinners in their upstairs suite. They had friends over for a party, and the laughter and music drifted down, but no one came to invite me. I ate soup alone at the kitchen island, the silence so loud it rang in my ears. Then I found the contractor's business card on the hall table with an appointment time scribbled on the back for the following Saturday. When David came home, I held it up. What's this? He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Oh, just getting some quotes for the future, for the updates we discussed. His smile was patronizing. Don't worry your head about it, Anne. We'll handle everything. You just focus on, being comfortable. And maybe start thinking about which personal items you'd want to take with you if you ever decided to relocate. The threat was veiled, but it was there. They were moving forward with or without my consent. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the dark, cold living room on their modern sofa, feeling its unwelcoming stiffness. They weren't waiting for me to die of old age. They were creating a situation so uncomfortable, so hostile that I would choose to leave. They wanted me to volunteer to disappear. I opened my tablet. The list was long, but it wasn't enough. I opened a new note. I titled it Plan B, and I began to type. I researched storage facilities. I looked up laws on tenant rights versus guest rights in Pennsylvania. I noted the number for a highly recommended moving company. I was no longer a victim waiting for the next blow. I was a strategist preparing for a siege. And for the first time in 18 months, I felt a flicker of something other than dread. I felt a grim, determined sense of control. The contractor came on Saturday morning. He and David walked the property, pointing at walls, gesturing toward the backyard where my garden flourished. Their voices were loud, full of possessive energy. I stayed in my room, my heart a drum against my ribs. The showdown, I knew, was minutes away. After the contractor left, Jenny called me downstairs. Mom, can you come to the living room? We need to talk. Her tone was the one she used for serious client meetings. I walked in. They were seated side by side on the sectional, a united front. David gestured to an armchair opposite them. Have a seat, Anne, Jenny began. She'd clearly rehearsed it. Mom, we've been doing a lot of thinking about the future, about everyone's happiness and independence. She spoke about my need for a community of peers and appropriate care. She mentioned beautiful assisted living facilities with activities. It was a sanitized corporate speech about disposing of me. My hands were cold in my lap. David took over, his voice dropping to a false confidential tone. Anne, let's be frank. This house, it needs to evolve. It needs to suit a growing active family. Jenny and I feel it's time for you to consider a more suitable environment. We've researched some excellent options. We'll help with the transition, of course, with packing. The words hung in the air. I felt a physical sensation as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water directly into my chest. My lungs locked. I looked at Jenny, my little girl. I searched her face for a flicker of doubt, of pain, of love. I saw only impatience and a strange, strained resolve. She wanted this over with. My voice, when I found it, was a dry whisper. This is my home. David didn't let me finish. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Technically, yes, but this is our home, our family's home. And finally, we can actually live in it the way we want to. The triumph in his voice was naked. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Jenny leaned forward, her eyes hard. Where are you going to go, Mom? You have nowhere. You'll have to come to us. It's better if you just accept this gracefully. They both looked at me, waiting. They expected tears. They expected pleading. They expected a broken old woman to beg for shelter in her own house. A profound calm descended on me. The fear, the hurt, the confusion. It all evaporated, leaving behind a crystalline clarity. I looked from my daughter's expectant face to her husband's smug one. I held their gaze for a long, silent moment, my own face blank. Then, without a single word, I slowly stood up. I turned my back on them and walked out of the room. I didn't hurry. I didn't slam the door. I just left them sitting there in their victory, shrouded in a silence more powerful than any scream. I heard a confused, hushed exchange behind me as I climbed the stairs, but I didn't listen to the words. Upstairs, with the door closed, I moved with an efficiency that surprised me. The stunned calm solidified into focused action. My hands were steady. First, I called the moving company. This is Ann Stewart. We are a go for today. The address is 42 Maple Lane. Yes, within the hour. Next, I called a locksmith service, scheduling them for later that afternoon. Finally, I called Robert. It's time, I said simply. In 57 minutes, a large unmarked moving truck and a crew of 3 polite, burly men arrived. I met them at the door. Jenny and David emerged from the living room, confusion on their faces. Mom, what is this? Jenny asked. I'm leaving, I said, my voice even, just as you asked. I turned to the foreman, a man named Leo with a kind face. We'll start with the main living areas, everything on this list. I handed him my tablet, the screen displaying the categorized inventory I'd made. What happened next was a methodical dismantling. Leo's team went straight to the living room. They carefully wrapped the minimalist sectional, the glass coffee table, the floor lamps, all items purchased with my credit card, all on my list. David sputtered. Hey, what are you doing? That's our furniture. I didn't answer. I showed Leo the receipts on my phone. He nodded to his men. They kept working. They moved into the dining room. They took the custom light fixture. They rolled up the Persian rug. They unscrewed the vintage brass curtain rods and took the heavy linen drapes I'd had made. David was in full rage now, following Leo around. You can't do this. This is theft. I finally looked at him. Show me the receipt, David. I held up my phone. I have mine. His mouth opened and closed. He had none. Jenny was pale, clutching the doorframe. Mom, stop this. This is insane. I directed the men to the kitchen. They disconnected and carefully removed the stainless steel refrigerator, the double-wall oven, the wine cooler. They boxed up the set of professional copper cookware hanging from the rack. The kitchen, the heart of the home they wanted, was being stripped bare. Then we went outside. Leo's men had brought special equipment. They began to carefully dig around my prized rose bushes, placing the root balls into large, specially designed containers. They wrapped the Japanese maple's branches and prepared its root ball. They even removed the 2-century-old stone bird baths I'd found at an antique fair. Jenny ran outside, tears streaming. You're destroying everything. The garden. How could you? The raw anguish in her voice was the first real emotion I'd seen from her in months. I turned to face her. The pain in my own heart was a physical weight, but my voice was low and clear. No, Jennifer. You and David destroyed it a long time ago. I'm just taking back what's left. At that moment, Robert's sedan pulled into the driveway. He got out a leather folder in his hand. His presence, brought a sudden formal silence. He walked over to Jenny and David, who looked like survivors of a tornado. "Jennifer David," he said, his tone professional and grave, "as Mrs. Stewart's legal counsel, I am serving you with formal notice." He handed David a document. "This is a copy of the deed confirming Anne as sole owner. This letter revokes any implied license for you to occupy the premises. You are hereby given 30 days' notice to vacate. Failure to do so will result in formal eviction proceedings." He handed another paper to a stunned Jenny. "Additionally, the house has been listed for sale as of 9 a.m. this morning. The lockbox will be installed this afternoon. You are to coordinate any showing appointments through the listed realtor. You have no legal right to refuse entry." David's face was purple. "You can't. She can't." "She can and she has," Robert said calmly. "The law is very clear." I walked to the rented compact car I'd secretly picked up the day before. In the trunk was a single small suitcase with a week's worth of clothes and my important documents. Everything else I owned was in that moving truck, headed for a secure, climate-controlled storage unit I'd rented weeks prior. I took one last look at the house. It was a shell. Empty windows, a scarred yard, a hollow silence emanating from its open door. Jenny was sobbing on the porch steps. David was staring at the legal papers, his shoulders slumped in utter defeat. I got in the car. I started the engine. I did not look back. I drove away, and with every mile the weight on my chest lessened, replaced by a vast trembling and terrifying freedom. My temporary haven was a furnished corporate apartment in a quiet complex 30 minutes away. The first night, the silence was absolute. No footsteps overhead, no critical comments, no television blaring from another room. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I sat on the generic beige sofa and wept. I wept for the loss, for the betrayal, for the beautiful, stupid dream I'd sold my past to buy. But when the tears subsided, a new feeling seeped in. Peace. It was fragile, but it was mine. The calls started the next day. First rage, David screaming about how I'd ruined them, how I was a selfish old witch. I listened silently, then hung up. Then pleading. Jenny, her voice thick with tears, is saying they had nowhere to go, that David was so angry. What was she supposed to do? Then the revelation. "Mom, the realtor came. She said there's a second mortgage on the house for the renovations. We can't afford to buy it from you. We have nothing." Her voice broke into a true sob. They had learned something, all right. They'd learned the house wasn't a free gift. It was an asset with debts, and it was never truly theirs. I let her cry. When she quieted, I spoke, my voice softer than it had been in months, but with an iron core. "I love you, Jenny. I will always love you. But love does not mean I let you destroy me. You need help. But that help is not my responsibility anymore. It's yours." I took a breath. "I've emailed you the contact information for a financial therapist and a credit counselor. They are excellent. Call them." I spent a day at the storage facility. Leo's team had organized everything beautifully. My furniture, my rugs, my dishes all wrapped and labeled. My rose bushes and maple tree were in a shaded, protected corner, waiting for a new home. I ran my hand over the fabric of my old settee. It felt like a memory, not a loss. I called Eleanor, my friend from my teaching days. We met for tea at a little shop with real china cups. She didn't pry. She just talked about her book club and her new puppy, and it was the most normal, healing conversation I'd had in over a year. I started looking at real listings. Not grand houses, but small, manageable places. A little cottage near a lake caught my eye. It had a small, sunny patch for a garden. I visited the local senior community center and asked if they had any need for a volunteer to teach a basic woodworking class. The director's face lit up. "Would you? That would be wonderful." For the first time, I was offering something purely because I wanted to, not because it was expected of me. A week after I left, a handwritten letter arrived at my apartment, forwarded from my P.O. box, Jenny's elegant script on the envelope. It wasn't a demand. It was 7 pages long. Pages of apology, of shame, of realizing how deeply she'd been influenced by David's materialistic worldview, how she'd let her ambition and desire for a certain life erode her compassion. She didn't ask for money, she didn't ask to move in. She just said she was sorry and that she was starting therapy. She said she missed me. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a small wooden box on the kitchen counter. It was a seed. I had no idea if it would grow or what it would grow into, but I was willing to leave it in the sun and see. It took 2 months, but I found it. A little cedar shake cottage on Lake Wallenpaupack. It needed a fresh coat of paint and some love, but the view of the water was breathtaking. I used the proceeds from the sale of the big house after paying off the renovation loan to buy it outright. The first thing I did was paint the front door the same cheery yellow as my old sunroom. I planted 3 of my recovered rose bushes by the front walk. The Japanese maple found a proud new spot where I could see it from the kitchen window. I brought Frank's wingback chair out of storage and placed it by the fireplace. I hung our wedding photo on the wall. I put the old porch swing on the little dock, its familiar creak, a welcome song. This space was entirely, unequivocally Anne. No compromises, no silent criticisms. The woodworking class at the center began with 4 students. Now we have 10. They call me Miss Anne, and their proud smiles when they complete a simple picture frame or a birdhouse fill me with a joy I'd forgotten. I've made friends with my neighbor, a widow named Gail, who loves to fish. We have coffee on our docks in the morning. The lesson that settled in my bones wasn't about vengeance. It was about love's true shape. I realized that my unconditional love for Jenny had over time built a cage for both of us. For her, it created an expectation of endless support without accountability. For me, it demanded endless sacrifice without boundaries. Setting a boundary felt like shutting a door, but it was really opening a window for both of us to breathe different air, to grow in different, healthier directions. Jenny and I have begun video calls with a family therapist. It's slow, it's painful. She's living in a small apartment, working to rebuild her credit and her sense of self without David's shadow. Our conversations are stilted, often ending in tears, but they are real. I am learning to love the woman she is becoming from a distance that allows me to keep my own heart safe and whole. I cannot fix her life. She has to build her own just as I'm building mine. I sit on my dock swing at twilight, watching the water turn to gold. At 68, I lost a house but found myself. I thought stability was a sturdy roof and 4 walls. Now I know real stability is knowing that no matter which way the wind blows, you can stand on your own 2 feet, with a heart soft enough to still love and strong enough to finally say, enough. What about you? What is the one boundary you need to draw? Not to punish anyone, but to protect the delicate garden of your own spirit. Have you ever had to find your strength in a moment you thought would break you? Share your story in the comments below. I read every one. If this story of quiet courage resonated with you, please give this video a like. It lets me know these shared experiences matter. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories about finding your voice later in life. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start over, please share this with them. Thank you for listening, for sharing this space with me. However your story unfolds, I wish you peace. I wish you strength, and I wish you a home, whether made of wood or of will, that is truly, completely your own.